So Thénardier becomes a slave trader. Spoilers, sorry. Hi, I'm Gabriella, welcome to my channel. Recently I did something that I'm quite proud of, and that is finishing reading Les Miserables, otherwise known as The Brick. Because, I mean, like, it's literally a brick. I started reading it several years ago. I read the first book of the first volume, and then didn't really read anymore until about 2 years ago when I found it at a hotel, so I got it, and I think I might have finished the first volume then. I can't quite remember. But then I didn't really read anymore until just after Christmas, and since this past, as in this Christmas, and since then I've been slowly chipping away at it, and I finally finished it! Now, you might be saying, volumes, books, this is only one book you've got here. Well, let me tell you. See, in this book here, we have five volumes with a combined 48 books inside, and I don't want to think about how many chapters individually are in between all of that. And that's over 1,463 pages. And looking at it, I mean, the writing's not exactly, like, large. So that took me a while. I mean, normally I'm quite a fast reader. I'd say my average is probably about 100 pages an hour. But with this, when I could kind of stick at it for more than about 5 minutes, I was only averaging about 40 pages an hour, and it was literally killing me. But I did it, and now I feel pretty invincible. Like, I could read anything. Like, I got through this, like, throw what you want at me, I can read it. So one of the reasons that it was so hard going, aside from just like complicated words and random like French things or like contextual things that were probably, you know, very obvious and didn't need explaining at the time, but I have like no idea about like, you know, in-depth French history and like all the sort of like, you know, big political people in like the early 1800s, because that's well known. But one of the big reasons that it took so long is because Victor Hugo, he really loves his tangents. I mean, I'm talking like, the book starts on a tangent. He goes off for 60 pages on the life and history of the Bishop of Digne. I can't even say that, the Bishop of Digne? Either way, in the musical, he literally has like 2 lines, and then you never see him again. And Victor Hugo spends 60 pages telling us his entire life. Valjean doesn't even appear for the first 60 pages. He doesn't appear till after that. And I mean, you know, there's all that talk about authors needing to, like, you know, if you're trying to write stuff and you're like, you gotta have your hook in the first, like, chapter, you gotta make it interesting so that, like, grip the readers in. Victor Hugo don't care about that. And somehow he's still a wildly successful author. So like other tangents he'd go on about, talked about Battle of Waterloo for like a good 60 pages, just like the entire like how it happened from various different people's perspectives, that sort of thing, just so that he could then spend literally only 2 pages saying that Marius's dad and Thénardier had met before. That's literally it. There's a solid 20 pages on like riots and how they sort of like start and the meaning of riots and like uprisings and things. And there was a good old tangent on Parisian slang, complete with a full page of examples of words plus the other words that they derive from, like just listed as examples, like one after the other, all in a sentence together for like a page. And it goes on. And you know, to accompany these tangents, as you do, we have like big sections of dialogue. Victor Hugo is very keen on his dialogue, and he will have like big old chunks of dialogue, but it won't just be like a regular conversation. It'll be like one person literally having a monologue for 3 pages. And like when I say a monologue for 3 pages, I mean literally no paragraph breaks, no nothing, just open speech marks, text for 3 pages, close speech marks. It's truly wild. To be honest, like once you take out all of the waffle in the novel, the musical's actually a really good adaptation of it. It gets like all of the important plot points, like, and very well and very succinctly, and pretty much covers, you know, it gets the most out of all of the plot points, and it also really gets the heart of all of the characters, of all the story. It really just, it's an incredibly good adaptation. If there could be adaptations of other books that I've read that are that good, oh my god, no one would complain about adaptations anymore. Like, this, like, pretty much everything. I'd say that the characters that are most different between the books and the musical are probably Marius, Eponine, and Madame Thénardier. Mainly because, like, Marius in the show, he's portrayed as like, fairly normal. He's got, like, his group of friends, he's a student, he's, like, hanging out with his mates. He seems fairly normal, fairly down to earth. Turns out, he's not really, like, great friends with most of the guys at the ABC Cafe. He's, like, friends with Courfeyrac and lives with him for a while, but he doesn't actually turn up to most of their, like, political meetings or whatever at the ABC. He's not there when, like, they decide to set up the barricades. He comes along later. He's quite an irrational person as well, and hot-headed. Like, literally, he'll get something into his head and it will completely change his life. Like, he finds out about his father having fought in the war and literally, like, abandons his grandfather, has one argument with his grandfather, walks out, and literally doesn't come back again for about 3 years. When he meets Cosette, they originally, like, meet in a park, and, like, he keeps going there until Valjean gets suspicious of him, like, naturally, because Marius is literally just sitting there staring at his daughter. But when he first meets her, he just stops working. He literally, like, lives to go to the park each day. And then when Valjean gets suspicious, and he doesn't see her anymore, he literally just, like, stops living. He stops doing anything. He gets, like, he runs out of money. He has to start borrowing from Courfeyrac, and literally just spirals. Because he's not seeing Cosette anymore. Even though they hadn't actually talked at this point, they were just staring at each other across a park. And he's also quite a bit of an idiot. Like, Eponine is dying in his arms, and she's like, oh, that's my brother over there, pointing at Gavroche. And he's like, oh, should I go get him? And she's like, nah, chill, I'm, like, dying in your arms, this is a moment. This is how I want it to be. So he's like, okay. And then she dies. He leaves her in the street and never actually tells Gavroche that his sister's dead in the street over there. Like, I mean, he does try to save Gavroche's life. Like, it is actually Gavroche who goes off with the letter to Cosette instead of Eponine. Like, they've changed that round a little bit. But the guy's sister just died and he doesn't think it's important to tell him? And when I say Eponine's different, I don't think she's drastically different. I think they just made more out of her being in love with Marius and made it seem like they had, like, an actual history and relationship when there wasn't really much of it there to start with. Like, in the books, like, they're neighbours for a bit, and she does really like him and contemplates trying to, like, delay things between him and Cosette, but, like, doesn't ultimately. But they don't, like, actually see each other much. I think they made her a bit older as well. Well, her and Cosette, because they're both, like, the same age, sort of. Because, yeah, in the books, I think Marius is, like, 22, and then Eponine and Cosette are, like, 15, 16. It's a little bit weird, but I assume that's normal back in the day. But yeah, I think they made her just a bit older, a bit more mature, and they kind of made a lot more out of the love story, because there wasn't one at all in the books. Like, Eponine did like him, like, really like him, but it was never by any stretch of the imagination a thing, ever. And finally, Madame Thénardier. I think they actually made her more intelligent for the show, which also made her, like, more fiercer and more independent. Because in the books, like, especially at the beginning, she's a lot more of a dreamer. Like, she names her daughters Eponine and Azelma because she's been reading all of these sort of, like, romantic fantasy type books, which, if you've seen the show, you would not picture Madame Thénardier as being the type to sit down and read, like, romancy fantasy books. She has, like, that one line, like, I used to dream that I would meet a prince, but that's sort of, like, the only real nod to her, like, actually liking all that stuff. And also, she wasn't a terribly good reader. She, like, struggled through those books that she read. And also, she dies in jail. That's quite different. Like, Thénardier himself, he's actually quite on point. I would say they made him less mean for the show. Like, the little bit in the street where they sort of, like, try swindle Valjean without realising it's him. In the books, that's actually like a whole thing in Thénardier's house where they've sort of like conned him there and then like take him hostage and try beat him up before Javert gets there. So yeah, he's a lot meaner in the books. He also like escapes jail, and then at the end, when Marius, like after the wedding, gives him some money, he uses that money to go to America with his daughter Azelma, who's still alive, and he becomes a slave trader. Like, damn, shit got real. But on a more cheerful note, you know whose character is completely on point? Grantaire. If anything, they actually sober him up for the show. Like, it's the point where when the barricades are being built, all of the guys are off at General Lamarck's funeral, like before the riots start. He's with two of the others at a restaurant getting hammered. They are drinking so much that he blacks out. When they all come along rioting and like his friends run out and like, here's a good place for a barricade, they build the barricade, he's still asleep. They have the first sort of like attack on the barricade, he's still asleep. They fight it off, he's still asleep. They have the whole thing with like Javert and Valjean and all that sort of thing, and Gavroche and Eponine, he's still asleep. They have the big final battle where like they find out like everyone else has kind of stopped rioting. There's like 2 other barricades left in the town and no one else has gone to support them either. So like there's 3 barricades against the entire like National Guard, and so they're a little bit screwed, and they know that, and they've just kind of all decided that they're gonna die. And so they're all fighting for their lives. Grantaire is still passed out drunk. They fight all the way back to the restaurant. Marius and Valjean like disappear half dead into the sewers. They're fighting in the restaurant. Grantaire is still asleep. Finally, as soon as Enjolras is the last one alive, surrounded by National Guard, Grantaire, who they've ignored because they already thought he was dead, wakes up, sees what's going on, shouts, "Vive la Resistance!" walks over to Enjolras, they shake hands, and then they both get shot. Like, moving on. I now feel like I understand why people dislike Cosette quite a bit and find her annoying. And I think that's because in the books, she is basically perfect. Like, she's nice, she's lovely. Like, I wasn't annoyed by the way she was written. I wasn't annoyed by her as a character, the way she was written, because she was just too nice, too good, kind of thing. You couldn't not like her. There was a bit of her being like a typical girl, like, oh my god, I've got to like see how I look in the mirror or whatever, like I want these like new dresses or whatever because it's the fashion and I want to be interested in fashion now, like as soon as she becomes like a bit of a teenager. But other than that, and like that wasn't even really annoying. And I mean, she does sort of like, she is like sickeningly in love with Marius, and Marius is, well, you know, he's completely blindsided by her and loves her. But those are like her only flaws. Like, she's one of those people that you meet and you're just like, you're incredible, I love you, you haven't done anything, you're just an amazing, good person. She is like that. And I think that's just so hard to portray without people finding it annoying. And I think that's what's kind of happened. People have been trying to play that, and I think just because, like, I mean, I think her lines in the show, like, they do it justice, but I think it's just something that's very hard to capture, is, like, you know, being nice and good without coming across as annoying when you're doing it, or, like, being annoying. Not, like, being annoying, but, like, being perceived as annoying. It's a struggle. But yeah, several lines in the show were actually taken from the book, and it was always, like, nice coming across one of those, sort of, like, at the end when Valjean's dying, and he's like, yes, Cosette, forbid me now to die. I'll obey, I will try. Something, I think that's lifted pretty much verbatim from the books. I think there's a line in between or something, like in the middle of it. Can't quite remember. But that was pretty much a straight lift from the book. There are a few others throughout, and yeah, it was really nice finding those. Like, there was actually some quite nice, like, poetic writing and sort of, like, just nice things, like when Eponine's dying and she's lying in Marius's arms and she's like, you know, Monsieur Marius, I do believe I loved you a little bit, or something along the way. I'm gonna have to actually find, I'm gonna have to find it, aren't I? God, where is it? It's all of the stuff at the barricade, like Act 2 in the novel doesn't start until about 1,000 pages through, maybe a bit past that even. Yeah, like past 1,000 pages. Yeah, she dies quite towards the end, page 1144. Like, the barricade's only just gone up, like in the last 100 pages or something. But anyway, she says, "And then, do you know, Monsieur Marius? I believe I was a little in love with you." And I think that's really pretty. Yeah, there were quite a lot of like little poetic phrases like that. When I say poetic, like just nice phrases like written throughout. And it almost made it worthwhile, all the hassle it was reading through everything to get to it. Almost. Like, if you're thinking of reading it, I would recommend it if you're like genuinely really interested in like the show or, you know, the work of fiction, and also if you have a lot of free time on your hands. Like a lot. Like literally I could not do it in large amounts, like unless the story was flowing. If you're on the sort of like exposition bits or the sort of like one of his random tangents, I was only able to do like a few pages at a time. If you do like 20 pages at a time, like a day, it's gonna take you 2.5 months to read. That's a big commitment. And like if you're stopping to look up stuff that you don't understand, it's gonna take you even longer. Because I mean, despite all the tangents he goes off on explaining things like the Paris sewer system, he doesn't spend time like explaining things, but to be honest, a lot of the things he references that he doesn't explain were probably quite obvious at the time. And I mean, it's been like 200 years since, so like, you know, fair dues. Like, I am happy that I've read it. I feel it's given me like a really good insight on the show, and I think I'm definitely going to enjoy it a lot more now. I mean, I already really enjoyed it a lot, but like it's sort of added that extra dimension to it for me, which I really like. But if you don't have the time or patience, like the musical is a very, very good adaptation of it. It captures the most important parts, like it gets the essence of it as well, it gets the heart, like pretty much all of the characters are spot on. I am curious about the TV show that was recently on the BBC. I might try watch that. I mean, I got immediately put off after the director slated the musical, and I was like, okay, well I was going to watch it as it was going along, but seeing as I'm actually making the effort to read the book now, I'll wait till after I've read it to watch the TV show. So I'm kind of curious. We'll see if I can get hold of it and watch it, but don't know. Yeah, let me know. Have you read the book before? What did you think of it? Did you have an easier time of it than I did? Because I struggled. Like, if it took you less than about 4 or 5 years to read, you've probably done it faster than me. So, have you seen the show if you haven't read the book? Do you have any favourite parts? I'd love to talk about it. Love Les Mis. As you must be able to tell, it takes a lot of love of Les Mis to be able to get through the brick. But I did it, and I'm so happy. Anyway, I will hopefully see you next time. Bye!